Welcome to those of you who are joining us. Today we're doing a webinar on demystifying InfoStealers. My name is Daniel Pigeon. I'm product marketing at Cyberint, and Daron Kappa, security researcher who specializes in InfoStealers, will be presenting in just a few minutes. In the meantime, a few quick housekeeping notes. So we're recording this session, just so everyone is aware. And we will send out a link to the recording of the webinar later in the week, along with the slides. So keep an eye out for that. And additionally, we love questions. So if any questions come up as we're working through the presentation, feel free to drop those questions in the chat and we will answer them along the way. Additionally, towards the end of the webinar, we'll save about 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. So we do love questions. Don't hesitate to ask if anything comes up. And I think that we can probably go ahead and kick off. So I will pass it over to you. Daron, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Daron, and I'm a security researcher in the team, in the Cyberint research team, and specializing, as Daniel mentioned before, in InfoStealers, alongside supply chain and vulnerabilities. And today we're going to do a webinar regarding InfoStealers, which we will present. I will go through the content table. So we have like introduction to InfoStealers, and later we will go through the major InfoStealer strengths, common delivery methods, targeted services and devices, data extraction and impact, and how to mitigate and remediate. And finally, we will have a quick Q&A session. Feel free to ask questions, and I hope we will all benefit from this session. So I'm going to start with the introduction to InfoStealers. So what kind of threat is an InfoStealer? So an InfoStealer is a type of a malware that steals sensitive data from an infected computer. I'm going to emphasize the sensitive data. It sends it back to the attacker after stealing the data. InfoStealers are known for many years. It became more common in 2021 and with increase in 2022. The increase could be in both ways. The increase could be in type of malwares and the targeting operating systems, and it could be also in the volume of campaigns that are being launched onto device hosts. So what kind of information the InfoStealer steals, right? Because we know that it steals sensitive data. So what kind of data it steals? By the way, I must add, we will focus in this session on Microsoft Windows InfoStealers. We know there are also InfoStealers for Android, such as Anubis, and for iOS, such as Xcode Ghost. But in this session, we will focus on the Windows ones. So what kind of data can be taken out from the device? What kind of data is under risk? So obviously we have the credentials, financial information, which might be credit cards, including the whole information of the credit card, cookies, which we'll deep dive a bit later in the session, crypto wallets, screenshots from the device, and operating system information. This is in general. There are a lot more information that can be taken from the device itself. But we will see it in a couple of minutes when we'll go on through the session. All right, let's go to the top 10 countries targeted by InfoStealers. So we can see that Brazil tops them all in 2022. Actually, it took the first place. Then comes after that India and Indonesia. They are tied in the second place. And USA was second last year and now fell to the fifth place. And in 2022, we can call it fell, but it's better than to be second, right? So it is kind of No, I want to do it, but this is a mistake. All right. Let's see a quick example of how a Stealer log should look like. So let's talk about what is a Stealer log. All right, Stealer log is just the information that's being sent back from the device, the infected device, into the command and control server, right? Because when we launch an attack on a device or launch a campaign on a device, we need to fetch the information back to our host. Why do we do that? We will deep dive into that in a second, right? Because why one should take the information, what it can do with that, what the attacker can do with that. Obviously, we are all thinking on the financial gain that an attacker can gain from that. But this is how the malware log looks like, right? It brings multiple information, such as client IP information, the IP address of the malware log, of the malware, of the device. And we can see also the credentials log file. It takes all of the credentials out from each browser, like it goes through profile by profile, browser by browser, and brings back all the saved credentials that being saved by the user. So we can see over here the URL that the credentials were saved for, and then we can fetch back the username and password in order to maybe sell it. So this is the main goal, to sell it or to sell access to somewhere from using those credentials that are being obtained from the infected host. And we can see here a couple of examples. Okta. Okta is a service that is being used by a lot of companies. In this case, it's Wells Fargo, and also an example of Citibank. And those credentials might be sold in darknet marketplaces for someone who wants to gain access to Wells Fargo, right? So this is what threat actors might do with this information that's being stolen from the compromised device. By the way, it can also point that enterprise device being compromised, right? Because we can see an interface that relates to Okta, which is a service which is used by Wells Fargo employees. So this might be also a Wells Fargo enterprise device or any employee device. So this is very, very sensitive information that might impact Wells Fargo. Any questions so far?
I've actually got one question I'm going to ask Daron. So in the previous slide, you showed the top countries being targeted by InfoStealers. And I'm wondering how you and the Cyberint research team gained these insights and this data.
All right, great question. And Cyberint is obtaining many malware logs, right? We are talking about millions of records. And let's explain. We just explained what malware log is. So when the data is fetched back to the command and control server, right? So some of the data also includes like the language of the computers that being infected, so we can check what kind of language the keyboard is, what the keyboard configuration has on the device itself, and then derive what region the stealer came from. And also each stealer contains some sort of a string which indicates what is the region of the log. So each log equals device, right? Because the log came from the device itself, and each log also contains what is the region of this device. So we can derive from that what kind of malware came from what region. So it helps us to see the distribution, to get the distribution of the infected hosts of the malware logs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. So let's go forward. We can see here an example of a cookie file, right? This is how cookie file looks like. And this is the same example of Wells Fargo. So we can see over here is that also in the cookie file, we can obtain data regarding the employee itself or any other. This is like an example of employee, right? Because we see that the email over here relates to an employee. So you can understand how sensitive this data is, right, for the organization itself, because we are not talking about an individual that its data was compromised. We're talking about an opportunity for the attacker to gain access into a major organization. And the impact from that might be destructive for an organization. So this is how the cookie file looks like. We will deep dive into cookies and what we can do from cookies, what an attacker can obtain from cookies in the next slides. And so let's continue to major strengths of InfoStealers. So we can see over here the top 10 most popular. It's not 10, right? It's 5, but most popular InfoStealer distributions. Redline dominates the market. We can see over here Raccoon and Meta, which Meta is a new InfoStealer that was presented in March 2022. Vidar and a bunch of others InfoStealers that are operating in the market. So the top 4 account for over 90% of all infections, and Redline, right, dominates them all. Any questions regarding that?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear why Redline is so dominant. Like, what are the differences between these different types of InfoStealers, and how is Redline managing to gain over 50% of the market?
All right, good question. Each kind of InfoStealer has its own capabilities and methods of attack. So they are differing by their capabilities, methods of attack, and what I would like to gain. Like if I was an attacker, what I would like to gain from my what is my attack purpose, right? Because each InfoStealer does things a bit different. So why Redline is the most dominant? Because Redline is known for its rich capabilities, and it's very available in the surface web. It means that I don't need to go deep dive into darknet in order to gain one of those. By the way, Redline also contains a business model of a malware as a service, right? Because it helps me, like the operators of Redline just created a business model that helps me to purchase the Redline Stealer services without any need to do it on my own. I can just pay and get whatever I need and just provide them the victim list or whatever I need. So Redline is very mature InfoStealer. This is why it dominates the market right now. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So we can see over here as an example of how easily I can purchase a stealer to do things for me. I can just Google it easily Google it, and I will get multiple websites that are selling Redline or Dark Crystal, which is a different kind of rat, an Agratir, Grid Stealer, and many others. By the way, if you consider purchasing it, just make sure that they are not infected by an additional malware, right? Because sometimes people purchase those, download those, and then got infected by themselves and without even distributing it out. So just making sure that it's clear.
Good advice.
Yeah, amazing. All right, let's have a look on some kinds of InfoStealers. So we have an InfoStealer that is called Raccoon. It has a couple of versions. The first version, the second version. The second version just was released in 2022. And we have Mars, Stealer, Blackguard, Jester. You can see the price of each one of those. You can definitely see, we can definitely see that they are acting as a product, right? They are offering different kind of services. They are offering samples. They are offering trials. They are offering a lot of things just to get you into their system and that you will like their service, right? And the price is not that expensive. One for $140 or $200 per month is not that expensive. You can also purchase for a lifetime for $1,500, and those are quite affordable, and the impact is huge. The impact of such malware is huge, and it can be purchased by threat actors for even novice threat actors for just few bucks. We've already seen threat actors making use of those, and they don't need to invest much money and time in order to gain information or gain sensitive data from a dedicated host or a spear host. And all right, second.
I'm going to throw one more question at you, Doron, if that's okay with you. So because you mentioned that some of these InfoStealers they're actually quite cheap. I mean, a couple $100 a month, like we just saw. So who's using these InfoStealers primarily? Is it fair to say that it's mostly low-level threat actors or threat actors who don't have a lot of technical skills, or is it a bit broader of a market than that?
All right, a great question. It can be both. All right, it can be used by low-level threat actors, which might use the malware as a service model in order to gain access or to launch a campaign or to do any kind of those things. And it can also be used by big threat actors. All right, it can be ransomware groups, it can be APTs, and it also helps them to cover the tracks, right? Because they don't need to develop anything or deploy anything by their own, all right? They do not need to invest any time or money to bring security researchers, or I don't know, like red security researchers, to develop any kind of tools that gains access to a computer. It can also it can use those services in very small amount of money in order to gain the first access, and also the tracks that are being covered, right? Because if it will get caught, it will be defined as some sort of a malware, rather than I don't know who did this because this is a new kind of TTP that I wasn't aware of, right? Because TTP stands for tactics, techniques, and procedures for the ones, just to be clear. So this is how it looks like. It can be used by both mature threat actors and skitties in order to gain access to an organization. And thanks. In this slide, we can see a bunch of new versions of stealers that being witnessed in 2022. So we can see the Jester Stealer, BlackNet V2, which is a new version, Ginzo Stealer or Gizmo Stealer, Spectre, Mitsu Stealer. By the way, Mitsu Stealer is a great example for launching a campaign of AnyDesk, right? Because Mitsu Stealer was obtained via an AnyDesk campaign that was launched, and the ones who downloaded the file are just downloaded the malware, right? Just downloaded the stealer to their computer, to their computer. So this is one way to deliver the malware or the InfoStealer via a software campaign, right? An ad that being at the top of the Google search. Like if I go through if I'll search for AnyDesk download in Google, I will get it like advertised on top, and then I can download the malware without even noticing it. So InfoStealer is a great example, and that we see also the new techniques how to deliver those InfoStealers. Arctic Stealer, Blue Fox, Aurora, Steelsea, and many others. Those are the main ones.
Jerome, one question that just came in from a viewer, from someone who's attending the webinar. Are they using typical delivery vectors to get in, for example, phishing or drive-by attacks, or are there any special or additional vectors?
As far as we know, they are using them. If only to elaborate on what kind of vector that they are using, they're using the malicious attachment, like malicious emails. They're using the browser add-ons, malicious browser add-ons. They're using the drive-by method, as mentioned before. And yeah, exactly. We are also witnessed like a supply chain kind of attack for developers that a dependency, multiple dependencies from the PyPy library got infected, and the developers just downloaded malicious SDKs or malicious packages to their computer with InfoStealer inside. So there are multiple vectors that might get InfoStealers onto one's computer. This is like they are very, very agile in their ways of delivering the InfoStealer, and yes, those are the main vectors that I'm currently aware of.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right, so common delivery methods. We can see delivery techniques via malicious apps, malicious websites, malicious attachments, and malicious or digital ads. All right, I think I went through each one of those. I'll do a quick brief overview. So the malicious apps, all right, the threat actors deploy applications which are malicious and can be found in every app store that you can be aware of, that you can think of, starting from Play Store, Android Play Store. Every period of time, there is a report that being released on. We found 20 to 30, I don't know, malicious applications, and most of them are kind of VPN style applications that being infected, and the malicious apps are a very common way to deliver the InfoStealer. Malicious websites, of course, there are a couple of malicious, not a couple, ton of malicious websites that contains InfoStealers to download and camouflage, as a legitimate app, and malicious attachments, old technique, but very useful. And sensitive emails, which urges the user to open the attachment and to click on edit. By the way, currently we have from the mid 2022, Microsoft deployed the mark of the web prevention, that if you download a file with a macro file, it won't run on your computer. So it's partially blocks those kind of attacks. But malicious attachments also contain malicious links and also contain malicious LMK files that might also deliver those kind of malware. And malicious digital ads, we've already discussed it. All right, so let's move forward. So what kind of vulnerabilities are being exploited by the InfoStealers? So we saw that we have multiple vulnerabilities for each one of the InfoStealers. As you can see in the exploited by column, we can see different types of InfoStealers, starting from Raccoon, Archivider. By the way, some of those are built on top of the others, right? The InfoStealer builders or developers love to take like previous code from different InfoStealers and just adjust it and try to provide new version or a better version of the InfoStealer. So we can see over here that we have Raccoon and Otherworld and Redline, which are using CVEs. And let's talk about how the CVE structure look like. So we have the CVE in prefix, and then we have the year of the CVE, and right after that, some number that identifies the CVE itself. So we can see over here that they are using pretty old CVEs. So there is the main question that is, why do they use those CVEs? The simple answer is because it works, right? Why it works? Because most of the people, right? Maybe if you are on the enterprise device, you might be better protected, but on your personal computer, you need to patch every single time, right? Because you need to update your software. And it just works because most of the people on their personal computers are not patching enough or are not securing their computers quite well. So those CVEs work. And in case you work in an enterprise with the bring your own device method, it can also impact the enterprise itself, right? Because if the computer is not safe, so it's not protected enough, they don't have any EDR on their side or any other antivirus, it might get infected. So the reason that the CVEs are still here because they work. So this is how it looks like. You can see also on the right column what is the software that it infects. Not infects.
What would happen if someone downloaded an InfoStealer or somehow their machine got infected? And let's say it was, for example, as a ruled, and it's but the device has an updated version of Windows or an updated version of Microsoft Office, so the CVE is no longer present. What would happen in that case?
So the question for that is that if you are patched up, nothing will happen, right? Because the vulnerability is no longer exists. Right? Because if it was like a logic vulnerability, it already been patched and being fixed, and then nothing can harm your computer in the specific vulnerability, in the specific exploit. However, if you're not patched, you won't see a big message like a pop-up message on your screen. You've got infected, now a malicious code running backward. Right? It just do what it needs to do and send back to the C2, to the command and control server, your details, and you might not be aware of it, right? This is in the good case. In the bad case, it will be a first phase. All right, we talked about a few slides ago regarding low-level attackers versus big league attackers, the major league attackers. So the major league attackers, if we will take even the first example of the Wells Fargo, it can just access the computer and drop an additional malware or additional ransomware maybe, and start encrypting the system, right? Start encrypting or start navigating itself through other hosts to talk to other servers and try to encrypt those. So it can be used both ways. This is like the initial access. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
Targeted services and devices. So let's go on. Top services targeted by InfoStealers. Actually, this means what are the top logging details that we saw? Like, what is the most common login credentials that we detected? So we can definitely see over here that Google takes them all. Then we have the popular Roblox, and right after that comes Facebook, Live, which is Microsoft, Discord, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can see in the key takeaways, the third bullet, Windows machines and mobile devices, both Android and iOS, are most at risk of infection of InfoStealers. And by the way, I must say that iOS are less likely to be infected because of their strict security measures. So Android and Windows are definitely up to them all to be at risk. So we will discuss the mitigations and remediation in the in the following slides. However, just don't click what you don't know. So try to prevent yourself from clicking on unknown links and download the unknown software.
One more question from the audience, Jerome. How good are InfoStealers against sandbox environments and awareness / reverse analysis? So can these InfoStealers evade detection even in like a sandbox environment?
Definitely. The most up-to-date InfoStealers contains also a mechanism of anti-detection, because if there are if they have a logic to check if they are running in a virtual machine, or if there are any type of malware which related, not malware, so software, sorry. If there is any software that is related to security researchers, such as debuggers or such as IBRA and IDA, and if there are some of those, it won't run in the same way as it will detect that it runs on an actual victim. And so they have multiple anti-debugging tools, and they have also a anti-virtualization tools, right? They can detect those in the most updated versions of the major InfoStealers. And by the way, there are multiple different ways to prevent yourself to run on from the InfoStealer to run on the same region or that it came from. Like let's take the most obvious example. If those InfoStealers are launched from Russian-based actors and you don't want to infect another Russian-based victims, they might check if a keyboard with the Russian language is installed on the computer. If it does, it won't run over there or won't infect the system. So there is a lot of logic behind how the InfoStealer works. It maybe sounds like very simple kind of malware, but it's not that simple as it sounds, because the logic behind it is quite complex. And they trying, like the operator, the operator is trying to obfuscate as much as possible code and the logic behind the InfoStealers. All right, moving forward, data extraction and impact. All right, so the data stolen from the victims is quite extensive. From the name, email addresses, usernames, passwords. Just think about what you're saving on your computer or on your browser, right? If you go to the passwords on your browser, I believe all of you will find like sensitive data that you won't like anyone to get. If it is the bank account, if it might be, I don't know, your Netflix account or anything that is sounds sensitive for you. I don't know which one of you have its own sensitive information. So username, passwords, credit cards. For the ones of you who use crypto wallets, also the crypto wallet might be gone, or the keys from the crypto wallet might be gone. Authentication tokens, session IDs, and the direct impact of that is account takeover, identity theft, fraudulent transaction, breaches of corporate networks. This is what we've talked about a few slides ago. It might also resolve as a breach, and MFA bypass via stolen cookies, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. Any questions regarding the data extraction? By the way, I must add that each kind of InfoStealer is being used differently, all right? Because each one of the InfoStealers might fetch different things from the host, and it also might be configured by the operator what I need to bring back from the infected device. So, this is very general list of what could happen or what could be extracted from the computer, and the impact might be different between. It depends on what the campaign target is, right? Because if my campaign target is to infect an enterprise, its configuration might be different than if I would like fetch personal information and sell it in the marketplace. By the way, additional purpose for stealing information via InfoStealers is to sell it as an initial access broker, which means is that if I'll get via my campaign, let's say I'm a threat actor, I launch a campaign and I fetch back tens of credentials. I can sort those and look for enterprise or any organizational information or any organizational credentials, and then sell the specific credential via a darknet forum or via a cybercrime forum, and say, all right, I have now I have credentials for, I don't know, a Fortune 50 company, right? Which its revenue is, they are adding the revenue, and they're adding also like a bunch of different information from Zoom info or something like that without disclosing the company name, and just offering it for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. And they are getting, what we can see those sell quite quickly, right? People purchase those. And this is a different vector of why InfoStealers are getting so much attention from threat actors. It can just like be very, very, it can be very, it can bring a lot of money to the operator. So this is what they would like to say. All right. Any questions so far?
Well, I think I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit more about bypassing MFA, because in my experience, I think leaked credentials, we all know, is a big threat. I think every person who works in InfoSec knows that leaked credentials is a problem, but some people might underestimate the risk if they say, oh, we have MFA solutions in place, no problem. Like they have, yes, the credentials are out there on the dark web, but we've got MFA, so I don't have to worry about it. But it seems like the InfoStealers can take cookies and session IDs and things that help bypass MFA. So I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. You are correct. And why is that? Because after logging into a service, right? Let's say that I'm logging into my Microsoft account or my Office. So in the first phase, I will need to provide my credentials, right? What is my username and what is my password? In the second phase, I will get maybe an SMS or an email with 6 digits or any other authentication method, and then press log in, right? If it's good, we're in. It will also ask you, would you like me to save your login, right? That you not need to do that each time that you're trying to log in into the account. There is a trade-off over here, right? The trade-off is, would you like the customer to do such exhaustive login process, or you would like the customer to have a great experience and log in each time that he likes to without providing the credentials over and over again. So what happens in the background, that there is a session ID or a cookie session, or session cookie session cookie, and it's being saved on your computer, on your browser. And then when a cyber criminal brings back your sensitive information, including those cookies, the cookies might be still valid, like the ID that I get with the cookie saves and some sort of a token. And if the token, and each token contains like what is the expiration date of the token, right? It means like the token might be used for 15 minutes and also might be used for 2 weeks. It depends on what the service predefined. And because of that, if I was a threat actor and I fetched cookies back from the infected host, I can take this cookie in case that it's valid, inject it. You can just copy and paste it, right? Inject it, just copy and paste into my browser and log into the specific service. The specific service might also contain some sort of other security measures, such as previous devices that being logged into the account, and if they see any anomaly, they might pop up a message, all right, you can't access it, and you need to do the login process from the beginning once again, because we see something different on your characteristics. So it might be useful for an attacker to take this token and inject it to its own browser. And then the only thing that they need to do is to go to the page, to the index page, and voila, you just took over an account without doing any MFA procedure, and you're just log in and you can do whatever you like. Some of the services won't let you do sensitive changes to the account unless you have the password. But in this case, you might also have the password, right? Because you've already obtained all of the data from the device itself. So using cookies might be very sensitive. Most of the people don't understand what cookies are, but if you know how to use the cookies, how to use the tokens properly, it might benefit the threat actor and might be destructive to the victim or to the organization of the victim, or in a bunch of other cases. Yeah, did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like quite a threat, actually. So is this something that you're seeing in the wild pretty frequently? That threat actors will actually use these cookies to bypass MFA?
Yeah, the threat actors actually sell cookies. They're selling active cookies into bank accounts. This is like the most common threat that I'm thinking of right now. And they're selling access by cookies to bank accounts. They don't need the credentials. They're just providing the cookie, the token itself, and that's it.
So it's not just bypassing MFA, it's bypassing all authentication, essentially.
Yes, it might be bypassing all of those. Although there are a couple of there are multiple security measures implemented by the services that might prevent just using the cookie in order to gain access. But this is a great way for an attacker to gain access into that to one's account. And yeah.
Thank you for all that extra information. I think that's really, really useful for myself and for the audience. So thank you.
Sure. All right. Moving forward to mitigations and remediations. So the mitigation is to conduct security awareness training, get visibility on exposed credentials, to check your credentials, to see that they are in good length, right? Not like 6 digits or 7 digits without different type of numbers, signs, all of the to do it properly. monitor the web from for brand impersonation. This is something that Cyberint obviously does. We're looking for brands impersonation and just taking them down if it's needed. And use threat intel to monitor malware logs. I must say this is one of the greatest pre-incident methods. If you will detect the malware log near to real time and will rotate the password or disable the user or do any other of disabling the possibility for an attacker to gain access into the enterprise ecosystem or environment, and this is a major mitigation that should be done. And all right, and we have Cyberint Argos platform and intelligence. So we have the branded use, as I mentioned before, phishing, Cyberint detects phishing attacks, both on employees and customers, social media impersonation, applications, and also on the social media itself, and both for the brand itself and its C-levels, shadow ID and misconfiguration, Iris CVE. This is one of my favorites. We know how to provide the exploited CVEs in the wild, sometimes by who, sometimes what are the major current threats in the wild, and what might impact the brand, stolen credentials, data leakages, dark web chatter, and InfoStealers one-stop shop. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doron, for this presentation. It's been really, really informative. So at this point, we're going to open it up, open the floor for questions. If anyone has questions, please feel free to just drop them in the chat. We've had a few along the way, but we're very happy to answer more. So don't hold back. Any questions at all? Okay, I guess not. So I think we can wrap up. I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I hope that you found all of this useful. We will send out the recording and these slides by the end of the week, so keep an eye out for that. And once again, thank you, Doron, for the presentation. It's been really, really useful. So thanks, and to all of you, have a good night, good afternoon, good morning, good day, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you.